Shalom in the name of Yehoshua HaMashiach, and we're continuing this investigation into Paul or Shaul's teaching concerning the Torah. Now, the previous video we showed how Paul understood that the Torah could not bring life and could not bring victory over sin. And then we saw how that is actually contradicted by the prophets and by the Messiah Yehoshua. Continuing from this premise of Paul's that the Torah could not bring sin, could not overcome sin and could not bring life, then it follows that the Torah could not bring righteousness. In other words, right standing before the Most High. And Paul says this himself in Galatians. Galatians is ground zero as far as I'm concerned for Paul's understanding of Torah, because it's very, very clear what he thinks of the Torah in Galatians. In chapter 2, verse 16, he says about, start from verse 15. He says, "We, Yehudim by nature, and not of the Gentiles, sinners, knowing that a man is not declared right by the works of Torah." A man is not declared right by the works of Torah, but through belief in Yehoshua, Messiah. Even we have believed in Messiah Yehoshua in order to be declared right by belief in Messiah, and not by works of Torah, because by works of Torah no flesh shall be justified, no flesh shall be declared right or justified, as it says in other versions. So he's very clear that no flesh, no person shall be declared right, shall have right standing before Yahweh by the works of the Torah. Okay? And he repeats it, and he says, for me, this is where things get really, really serious as far as Paul's concerned. Because look what he says in verse 21. He says, "I do not set aside the favor of the mighty one. For if righteousness is through Torah, then Messiah died for naught, for nothing." This is how serious he views this doctrine. He said that if righteousness could come through Torah, then Messiah Yehoshua died in vain. And he repeats it again in chapter 5 and verse 4, where he says, "You who are declared right by Torah have severed yourselves from Messiah. You have fallen from favor." So for Paul, you've got faith in Messiah on one hand, and then you've got being declared right by Torah on the other, and never the twain shall meet as far as he was concerned. You cannot be declared right by Torah and have faith in Yehoshua. His understanding is that you just cannot be declared right by Torah. It's just impossible. But what saith the Scriptures? What does the Torah and the prophets say? Once again, they say something totally opposite. If we go to Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 6, verse 24, we read this verse in the first video. It says, "Yahweh commanded us to do all these laws, to fear Yahweh our mighty one, for our good always, to keep us alive as it is today. And it is righteousness for us when we guard to do all this command before Yahweh our mighty one, as he has commanded us." Moses says it is righteousness for us when we guard to do all the command, to do the Torah. So, plain as day, Moshe says that righteousness, it will be righteousness for the children of Israel when they guard and do the commandments. But Paul says, no, it will not be, because righteousness cannot come through the Torah. Contradiction. Now, you could argue that Moses here was talking about national and not individual righteousness, but then all a nation is what? Is a collection of individuals. So the same principle applies for both the individual as well as the nation. And this is actually stated by the prophets. For example, Ezekiel, again, chapter 18 and verse 5. This is such an important chapter, actually. He says this, If a man is righteous and shall do right ruling and righteousness, in other words, keep the commandments, as we'll see, if he has not eaten on the mountains, nor lifted up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, nor defiled his neighbour's wife, nor comes near a woman during her uncleanness, menstrual uncleanness, if he does not oppress anyone, does return to the debtor his pledge, does not commit robbery, does give his bread to the hungry, and covers the naked with a garment, if he does not lend at interest or take increase, turns back his hand from unrighteousness, executes right ruling in truth between man and man, if he walks in my laws and he has guarded my right rulings in truth, he is righteous. He shall certainly live, declares the Master Yahweh. Yahweh says that if a man, all this here is basically summarizing the works of the Torah. If a man walks in the commandments, keeps the statutes, then he is righteous. His righteousness comes because he keeps the commandments. So Yahweh himself, it contradicts the teachings of Paul. Paul says that a man cannot be declared right by the works of Torah, but Yahweh says the exact opposite, that by the works of the Torah, by works of keeping the commandments, that is how a man is righteous. That is how a man stands before his face, before the face of the Most High Yahweh. And then again we go to the words of Yehoshua, the Messiah, and again Matthew 5 verse 17 to 20, very critical scriptures. We're just going to look at verse 19 and 20. We know he's talking about the Torah, and he says, "Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens," or the kingdom of heaven. "But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens." And look at this. "For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign of the heavens." Now some people, they view this and they say, oh my God, we've got to be so holy. But then if you look at other things that Yehoshua says concerning the scribes and Pharisees, obviously it doesn't mean every single last scribe and every single last Pharisee, but just speaking about them in general and about the leaders of these groups. He accuses them of breaking the commandments. Go and have a look at these scripture references down here, Matthew 15 verse 3 to 9, and etc. Read them here, where Yehoshua accuses the Pharisees of transgressing the commandments. And what Yehoshua is saying here is that your righteousness has got to be the righteousness which comes from Torah, the righteousness which we have read about in Moses and in Ezekiel. That is the righteousness, and as we've seen, that righteousness comes through keeping the commandments of the Most High, through guarding the commandments of the Most High. Like we saw in the previous video, those who keep the commandments, those who desire to keep the commandments, and rejoice in the commandments, they will keep their feet away from wickedness, and they will have life. This is the righteousness which Yehoshua is referring to, and that's the righteousness that we should have. And in the context, he makes it very plain that he is talking about the righteousness which comes through doing the commandments, and even teaching others to do the commandments. So, according to what we've seen in these scriptures, in Moses, in Ezekiel, and in the words of Yehoshua, Paul again taught erroneously when he said that righteousness could not come through the Torah, because we've seen the exact opposite. Righteousness does come through the Torah, and that's just another enormous problem which I'm seeing in the teachings of Paul of Tarsus, Shaul of Tarsus.